Okay, welcome back. This is part 2, and in this video I'm going to be covering the journal that in part 1 we covered the entire journal front and back with vintage book papers, and now I'm going to be putting lace on top of that. It's not going to matter to me all that much on the front or back where the pattern hits, because well, at least not on the front, because I'm going to be covering most of it over with my focal point. I'm going to cut my lace about 1/2 inch or so all the way around, larger than my journal cover, so that I have plenty to overlap onto the back. I don't advise leaving a whole lot. It's just going to be wasted and just makes it that much more difficult to cover your journal. Okay, so this is our inside. That's the cover. So I have the more sparse design on the front, because most of it's going to be covered over anyway. And then on the back I'm going to have, well, I don't know. That doesn't look so good, having flowers be upside down. So maybe I better not do that. But that leaves that on the back side. Well, I'm maybe covering the back side over with something anyway, so just not going to worry about it. All right. So now I'm going to start with the corners, and I'm going to use my fabric glue. It's called Fabri-Fix, and it's a very good glue for gluing fabric to fabric or fabric to paper. Links to the glues are in the description box below. And, I'm Miss Darling, and welcome to my channel. If you're here for the first time, I hope you'll find my content of value to you and you'll want to subscribe. We'd love to have you join us. And I not only teach how to do what I make, but I also try to include the design and placement training in it as well, so you'll know why I do what I do, not just watch me do it. And I think that's one of the areas that is so lacking in the videos I see elsewhere. People don't have the design knowledge, and if they do, they're not sharing it. So I'm nailing down the corners first, just by putting some glue on the corner and then pulling the fabric over. Not real tight, but tight enough so that it's not going to gape or buckle. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I encourage you to watch that. I had explained in there that I'm making a journal for myself and my sister that is full of nostalgic scenes from where we grew up in Japan. And because she has spent several decades in the wedding business. This is also going to bring in some vintage imagery of brides and couples, especially if they are Japanese. I had run across some photographs that were in my mother's things that she had left here, and she's passed on now. And I ran across some photos that she had from the 1920s and 30s, wedding photos of some of her friends in Japan. And so I'm going to include those in here so my sister can enjoy them as well as myself. And it gives us something in common. Her journal is only going to be one signature because she doesn't journal. And so I'm going to be filling hers up with tons of imagery and not really thinking at all about leaving space for journaling. I will show you the one I'm also making for myself, but not until the end. Mine will be a two signature journal, and hers will be one signature. So hers has a 1/2 inch spine, whereas mine has a 1-inch spine. I hope that makes sense. If not, please be sure and watch part 1, where I show you how I started from scratch. And put on all of the vintage book pages that you see here. That will be in the background. You need to have something of a darker or brighter color in the background so that the design of your lace shows up. You see. What I don't advise is that you do anything with high contrast. So I've got a little bit of black in here that was on the darker pieces that I stuck on there. I'm okay with that, but we don't want to do much of anything that brings a real strong, bold contrast if you're going to put lace over it, because it's just distracting. And I made that mistake on mine, and you know, it worked out okay because I actually wound up covering it over, but I don't want to see other people maybe have to veer off their plan because they did something that was too high in contrast and drew too much attention to itself. Now, I'm going to do hers in a more simple way that's be less confusing to viewers than what I did with mine. And let me explain why by showing you mine. Okay, when I brought forward the lace from the front, of course I had all this jaggedness in here, and but I wanted to leave the book page showing in here, so I had to go to greater lengths to cover up my edges, to cover over the spine and to cover the tops and the sides, because I wanted to leave the book page. But in her case, I'm going to put 2 end sheets on there that are going to cover all that over automatically. So it's a lot quicker and a lot simpler than what I did with mine, and I think is, you know, better suited for the video for all of you. Anyway, obviously if anybody wants more info on how I did what I did with mine, please ask me questions in the comment section. I'll be happy to help you. All right, now the first thing I'm going to do is cover the spine. And I'm not going to do that with lace, as it won't cover it sufficiently. What I'm going to do is cover it with some coffee dyed cotton that I have here. And let's look for some that has some good striations in it. You know, for a little more interest. And it needs to be wide enough to more than cover the spine. And our spine isn't very big, so it doesn't need to be very big, or very wide, I should say. So I'm just going to rip off a section like this. And that's going to drop in right there. And because I covered over the interior of her spine, which I did not do with mine, I can get away with just one piece of coffee dyed cloth here. I had to add some lace to mine just to make it more pleasing to the eye for me. And what I do is I lay it down there where I want it to go, and then I only glue half of it at a time so I can control the placement. Somebody's doing some carpentry in the neighborhood. I don't know if you can hear that or not. I hope it doesn't bother you. Nothing I can do about it. I don't know where it's coming from, but a neighbor must be doing some remodeling or something. And now we're coming back and doing the other half. I suppose you can use, paper glue to do this. It's just that it will probably take longer to set up and become permanent. This fabric glue sets up rather quickly and does give it a nice strong adhesion. Do be careful of how much glue you use, however, especially if your fabric is rather thin, because it can bleed through to the front and, you know, just might leave a leave some residue there that that you don't like. All right, so now I'm ready to put down the end pieces for her, and I'm going to do this one on that side and this one on this side, I think. And let's see what it looks like. It might be a little better. Being right-handed, I kind of like the stronger image on the right side, though that will be the back of the journal. So maybe I'll stick to plan A, so that the stronger one is on the inside front. So now it's just a matter of gluing this down, and then that covers over the raw edges of the lace that got pulled over from the front. All you have to do is lay your paper down on top of the journal itself and take a pencil and mark off where you need to crop it. This is folded. It is a 5.5 by 8.5 cover, but your end paper for the inside will need to be slightly smaller than that all the way around, because you don't want it to come out to all the way out to the edges, where it could get, you know, torn away or something. And you don't need it to do that. You just need it to be big enough to cover over the edges of the lace. And then you lay it in carefully. Make sure it is as straight as can be. And pay particular attention to the corners. Make sure they are, you have really good adhesion there, as that can be a weak point. And you make sure that you are not infringing on this gutter that runs along the side of your spine, so that when it's closed up, it's not infringing. I came pretty close to doing that, a little closer than I had wanted. So, you know, just be careful of that. And now the back cover. or I should say the inside back. The thing I don't like about this glue is it is really as slow as molasses. To get it to come out, you do need a little wider opening. I have to use quite a bit of pressure to force it out of the container, even though I'm using a softer container applicator. This is actually for bakery designers. It does require me to use more strength than I would like to. But it is a good glue, and so I stick with it. Okay, so now we've covered it with lace, front and back, and we have our inside end sheets glued down, our spine covered over, and so we're ready to put our focal point on the front. I have yet to decide what to do with the back, but I do know what I'm going to do with the front. And let me explain this. In Japan, when a person gets married, the guests, and they have a wedding reception, the guests don't go out and buy a brand new crock pot, wrap it up, and bring to you as your wedding gift. In Japan, they give cash. And the cash comes in the form of an envelope. And see, here's an envelope. And just big enough to stick some bills in there. And so this envelope would be placed in a decorative card. And here's a card that looks much like what they would stick the envelope in. And so I'm going to use this on the cover of my sister's journal, which I think will be very lovely there. And it establishes a color scheme for the entire journal and gives me a few options with a little bit of kind of a rose color and gray and some darker browns and a little bit of black. But essentially this color mixed with some gold tones. So we'll keep that in mind as we develop the journal further. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. First I'm going to pull away some of the excess paper back here. I don't really need that, making it bulkier. So I'm going to cut away a good deal of that. And then I'm going to glue these ends down. And now I'm going to make sure I have this placed a little above center. Is better design than having it right at the center. So I'm just going to flip this over and get some glue down right away underneath that band. Help hold that in place. And then I'm going to get my glue down all over the back. Here's where I wish it would come out a little quicker and easier. It's not a problem when you're just gluing down something small, but if you have a larger piece like this, it becomes concerning that some of the glue starts to dry out on you before you're ready to plunk it down. So we'll just hope for the best. I'll come back and add a little more to this original side. Okay. And it's going to go slightly above center overall. I think I'll add a little bit of glue right in here. To hold that in place. And you see, we have a lovely, very Japanese, very wedding-oriented cover design. Would say to any Japanese that this has something to do with weddings, and of course it will. And I'll decide later on a focal point for the back page. But for now, we have this. And this is our inside front and inside back. And so that'll be it for part 2. And I invite you to come back for part 3 and going forward to see how we finish this all out. Be sure and stop by my Etsy shop to find resources for your projects, and look in the description box at the bottom of this video for other links to tools or things that I use in the video. And please, if you found this of value to you, give the video a like and a comment. Would appreciate your thoughts and feedback. Whether you like it or whether you don't, I don't care. Just talk to me, ask a question, and please subscribe and join my community. We'd love to have you. So with that said, this is Miss Darling calling this a wrap. Bye-bye.